Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today, I'm doing the summer vinyl tag. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So these vinyl tag threads are always kind of fun to do. They're fun to watch also, but basically what it is it's 20 questions long. You just kind of go through, pull out albums out of your record collection and talk about them. There's one that always circulates at the beginning part of the year. And then this year, Dillon over at Noble Records put together a list for the summertime. A little bit different than what we do at the beginning of the year, but I'll kind of go through some of these pretty quick. I'll put all the questions down in the episode description if you want to do one of these videos yourself. So the very first question is an album or song with summer in the name. There's one album that immediately comes to mind when I think of the summertime, and that is the very best of the Beach Boys, Sounds of Summer. So this is always one of those summertime albums for me. If we're hanging out at the pool, this is one of the albums that we're streaming, or the Beach Boys in general is what we're streaming. But I don't know why. It can be like the middle of winter time, and I hear the Beach Boys, I immediately, it feels like it's 85, 90 degrees. You're out at the beach having a good time. It's just one of those albums that bring back a lot of memories for me. So the second question is latest heavy pull. So an album that you're really excited to see get released. This is an album that I've been waiting years to finally get a copy of it on vinyl. And that is The Fury of the Aquabats. I know this is probably one of those dumb albums that people look at and they're like, why would anyone want to listen to this? It's a really fun album. And this is, for me, it's a great album because of Travis Barker. So Travis Barker was in the Aquabats before he went to Blink-182. That's actually Travis right there on the cover. It's just a fun album, nice, really fun ska album to sit back and listen to. So number 3 is a Whack-A-Mole album. So this is basically just a random album from your record collection. I closed my eyes and grabbed one and ended up pulling out Electra 2000 by Hum. So Hum is very much known for You Prefer an Astronaut, which is the album that came out after Electra 2000. And this definitely has a different vibe on this album compared to other stuff that the band is known for, whether it's You Prefer an Astronaut or Downward is Heavenward, which is the two albums that came out after this one. This one, if you sit back and listen to this one, it's got this like early Nirvana kind of vibe to it. So if you think Bleach, that's kind of the vibe I got from this album. So if you're unfamiliar with it, it's definitely one worth checking out. Question number 4 is an album with an animal on the cover. Surprisingly, I had a lot to pick from. I decided to go with something that maybe a lot of people out there might not be really all that familiar with. But that is the self-titled debut album from the Distillers. This came out back in 2000. The lead singer of the Distillers, Brody Dahl, was, I think at the time, still married to Tim Armstrong. So if you're a punk fan and if you're not familiar with this album, definitely check this one out. This has a very strong, if you think of a better version of Hole, but done with a little harder edge to it, that's kind of what this album sounds like. Question number 5 is an album with a great story. I'm not sure how great this story is, but it was definitely an interesting one, at least to me. So the album is Songs from Suburbia by Spring Heel Jack. I've loved this album. This came out back in, I think, 98 is when this album came out. Just a great, fun ska punk album. And it was only pressed on vinyl, I think, back in, I'll have to look on the back of the album jacket here. It doesn't say, but I think this was 2015 when this album got pressed. Very small number. I want to say it was only like 500 copies of this album that were released. One of my favorite ska punk albums of the late 90s. Really hard to track down. I've been looking at that when I picked it up. I want to say it was like 2020 when I got a copy of it. I've been looking for a couple of years. And I had like reminders set up on Discogs. I could just never track down a copy of it. And then finally I got desperate and just started like randomly messaging people on Discogs. So I finally got somebody to message me back. And surprisingly, they were willing to part with their copy. I got this for a great price. I just absolutely love this album. It's one of my favorite albums that's in my record collection. Question number 6 is an album we would be surprised to see in your record collection. I'm not sure how surprised people would be by this one, but it is Rockabye Baby, Lullaby renditions of Blink-182. I'm a huge Blink-182 fan. I have been for a long time. This is one of those RSD releases that came out a couple years ago. Every year it seems like I pick up one of these like strange kind of quirky releases, and this is one that I don't listen to this one very often, but it's kind of cool to kind of toss this one on and just lullaby renditions of some of my favorite tracks from Blink. Question number 7 is Cheap Heat. So it's a great album. Doesn't cost a whole lot. One of my favorite albums of the last 15 years. You can get pretty cheap. This thing is going to run you probably about $20 on Discogs. You can probably find it online for around the $18 to $20 mark. This is Dancing with the Curse by Get Dead. Great punk album. This came out in 2020, I think is when this came out. Yeah, because it was, I guess, so kind of the way I fell into this album was early part of 2020 when all the lockdowns and everything were going on. Fat Mike had a live stream from his backyard, and Get Dead played some songs on that one. I remember watching that stream thinking, man, this is a really good band. And then I kind of forgot about them. And then a couple months go by, and someone in the Vinyl Dead Facebook group posted this album. And I immediately was like, oh my gosh, I forgot all about them. I need to go online. I went on Fat Wreck's website, bought a copy immediately. And like I said, you still get this thing for, it's around $20 online. But great, if you're a punk fan, this is definitely an album you got to check out. Question number 8 is a 45. So I don't collect a whole lot of 45s. I'm really kind of lazy when it comes to listening to music. I don't like having to flip an album after every song or two. But I did get, so I have been looking for something for a long time. It finally got reissued. Beginning part of this year, maybe it was late last year when this got reissued. But it is the soundtrack for one of my favorite movies of all time, That Thing You Do. And it came with a copy of the 7-inch Playtone 7-inch album from that was made famous in the movie. So it's got the title track, That Thing You Do on one side, and that's got the B-side, All My Only Dreams. But that's just a great album, great movie, and one that I was finally able to add to my collection. So question number 9 is favorite music documentary or biopic. I've got a great documentary in my collection. It's Vinyl Nation. So this came out back, I think it was 2020, Record Store Day 2020 when this one got released. They only made 1,000 copies of this, but it looks like a record, but it is not a record. This is a documentary all about the vinyl revival. It's really kind of cool to go through it. I'm not sure how to get a copy of this anymore. I'm not sure if it's available on YouTube or if you can stream it somewhere, but I highly recommend checking it out. It's kind of cool. It's packaged just like a record. It comes in a gatefold. I'll show you the back of it. It kind of goes over some of the stuff about the documentary, and then when you open this gatefold up, it's got some pictures in there, some information about it, and then it's got a copy of it on both Blu-ray and on DVD. Question number 10 is a box set. So I could have went a bunch of different routes with this one because I've got a bunch of box sets. One of my favorite ones from the last couple of years is one that just came out, late last year this one came out, but it is the 30th anniversary box set for Green Day's Dookie. There's so much great content that's in this box set that I think it's kind of where box sets kind of lose me with, because sometimes I guess I should kind of backtrack a little bit. The Black Sabbath box sets, I like those because it's just one album. It's got some good extra material in there, and they're not expensive. But I think once a one album box set gets over the $100 mark, it's got to have a lot of really good content in there, extra content for me to want to own the box set. And this one does. There's, of course, you got the great album in here, but it also has, I think there's 2 live albums in here. You also have the Woodstock show in here. There's also a bunch of unreleased material in here also. So it's kind of cool to go through this box set. This is one of those rare box sets where I pretty regularly will go through and listen to the extra material in there. Question 11 is most trashed album in your record collection. This is a pretty easy one for me. It's none of them. I mean, I previously have had kind of junkier albums. I've either, given them to Goodwill or I've donated them to other people. I just don't have them in my collection anymore. Question number 12 is a local album. I could have went a bunch of different routes. I could have went with, something from Eminem. I could have went with Bob Seger. I could have went with Kid Rock is also from the southeastern Michigan area. I could have went with a bunch of different Motown stuff, but I decided to go with an album that I think is the second best punk album ever released, and that is Destruction by Definition by the Suicide Machines. It's just an incredible album, and it's one that even 25 years later, I still listen to this one pretty regularly. It's I'd put this one album, if you want to look through punk music from the 70s on up until today, like I said, I would put this album up against almost anything out there. So question number 13 is an album from a faraway land. This is one of those one-hit wonder bands that, for the longest time, I remember listening to them back in the 80s. And then I didn't listen to them for the longest time. Actually, for a long time, I thought they were Australian. Until probably within the last 5 or 6 years, I realized they're English and not Australian. But that is Dexy's Midnight Runners. Of course, this album is known for Come On Eileen. It was the one big track from their career. I don't think I've ever actually listened to another album of theirs. And that was really the only track of theirs I knew up until several years ago when I started streaming them. And I was like, wow, this is actually a pretty good album. I think Come On Eileen is the best track on here. But there's some other really good ones on here also that kind of, I think, really makes this album worth owning. Question number 14 is a soundtrack. I decided to go with the most recent one that I just bought last week, and that is the soundtrack for Right Here, Right Now by Ghost. I've slowly gotten into Ghost over the last couple of years. I remember one of my friends tried to get me, for a good couple of years there to listen to Ghost, and I remember listening to maybe a couple of songs, but I was like, it's not really my thing. And then when they released Impera a couple of years ago, it was really kind of when I got hooked into the band. I saw Ghost on this tour last year, and it was probably one of the top 10 concerts I've ever been to. So when they released the film, I haven't seen the film yet. I will eventually see it, but my daughter went and saw it and just kind of raved about it. So I was definitely looking forward to grabbing a copy of this when it got released. Question 15 is your highest recommendation. So this is a recent album that you really highly recommend. I decided to go with an album it's one of my top 5 albums of the year so far. I've listened to this album nonstop since the early part of this year, and that is The Runs by Scooped Up. This is one of those albums where you listen to it and it sounds like something that was like straight out of Warped Tour 1999. Just a fun pop punk album. And these guys are really cool because if you go through and check out and follow them out on social media, they look like a bunch of really interesting kids, and they do some cool stuff, do some really funny videos. I like the way that they're kind of self-promoting this album, and one that, like I said, it's one of my most listened to albums of the year so far. So question number 16 is an album that's highest on your want list. I had to go through my Discogs want list and figure out what album on there, like if I had the opportunity to buy it, I would drop some serious money to pick it up. And I've been a big fan of MXPX for a long time. And this is really the only album that kind of came to mind when going through my want list. So in 2018, they released their self-titled album, which I've got a copy of it on my wall here. So this is their self-titled album from 2018. They were supposed to go on a tour of Japan after this album got released. And I don't know what happened, but the tour fell through. But there was a Japanese pressing of this album that was pressed. I don't know how many copies of it are available out there. I didn't even know this thing existed until probably a year or two back. I saw it on Discogs. Someone who posted on Discogs, not for sale, but just had entered it on Discogs. And I went into the MXPX fan group on Facebook and started asking questions about it. And no one had ever seen this before. And finally somebody commented back and said, yeah, it's a real thing. There's only a couple of copies that were pressed of it, though. It was never actually for sale. And there is somebody in the MXPX Facebook group that owns a copy of it, and they're paying probably, I'm sure, a lot of money for it from Japan, probably more than I was willing to pay for it. But this is one that does exist out there, but it's one that I'm sure I'll probably never come across. Question number 17 is a channel shout out. These are always fun because, YouTube is such a big place. And, seeing recommendations really kind of helps me discover new and interesting channels out there. I'm going to throw 2 out there. The first one is Flat Round and Spun. Trevor, he's been a member of the Vinyl Den Facebook group for a long time. He's one of the earliest subscribers to the channel. He's also a Michigan guy. He lives in the Pacific Northwest now, but does a lot of cool stuff on his channel. He does some live streams. I think it's every other Sunday that they do a live stream. Might be every Sunday. I'm not really sure. I catch it every other Sunday whenever they do it. But that's a great channel to follow. And then the second one is kind of self-serving. So I've been doing a podcast since January of 2017. We're going to kind of morph the podcast into the Vinyl Den. We're going to start a whole new channel. It's called the Vinyl Den After Hours. That's going to come out August 7th is our first episode. So I'll put links down below if you want to check out both those channels. Question number 18 is a silver lining in vinyl because, things can be so negative, especially nowadays. It's nice to find a silver lining in there. The silver lining I will say for vinyl is I think 2024 is a great time to be a vinyl collector. Sure, prices are expensive, but the availability. I remember for years there were albums that you just couldn't get on vinyl. And then, especially over the last, 3 or 4 years, there's been so many great reissues that have come out. So at least the albums are available now. Do they sound as great as some of those older pressings? Maybe, maybe not. It's kind of debatable, but at least they're available, and you don't have to drop $300 or $400 to get an original pressing of albums anymore. Question number 19 is a steal of a deal. So an album you got a great deal on. The album for me, probably the biggest deal I've got. Of course, since it's got reissued earlier this year, it's probably not as good of a deal. But this is Everybody by Logic. So this came out back in, I think it was 2016 when this album came out. Fantastic rap album, but super hard to find. The only place it was available was through pre-order through his website. Didn't get sold to record stores. It wasn't available out there. There's very limited copies you could track down. This is an album that would routinely sell for about $175 to $200 until it got reissued. But I did find it in one of the used bin at one of my local record stores. I probably paid maybe $12 or $14 for this album at that time. And of course, it was a great deal when I bought it. But since it got reissued this year, you can get this album for probably $40 or $45 now. And then question number 20 is a promo, specifically a white label promo. I got a couple of them. The only one I remember that I knew off the top of my head was the Self-Titled debut album from Faster Pussycat. I picked this up dirt cheap. I think I paid like $5 or $6 for this album a few years ago. And then I got home and opened it up and realized, it's right here on the side. It says, where's it at here? Promotional copy, not for sale. So that's kind of cool. It's like I think this is the first one that I'd like randomly found out in the wild. I do have some other ones in my collection, but I paid a little bit more money to have those white label promos. But this is, like I said, this is the first one that just kind of like randomly popped up. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Why don't you go ahead and pick one of those questions out of the 20 that I've got in the description there. Maybe I'll drop all 20 of them down in the comment section so it's a little bit easier to see them. But go ahead and answer one of those questions for me in the comment section. Love to know what you guys think. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.